next segment of today's Confluence is again very hotly debated topic, that is artificial intelligence. The rise of Gen AI has surfaced many questions about how technology is becoming an acquiring force in our life. Most of our day-to-day activities are influenced by calculations and algorithms that can outperform human-level execution. Presently, most discussions of AI extrapolate linearly from what it can do today to what it can do tomorrow. But AI's progression is following a very exponential curve, which is not necessarily, it's not a linear one, which also means that the advances that you're seeing could become or could come much more faster than most of us are expecting. Unlike past technological revolution, the impact of super intelligent AI could arrive much quickly and could also impact economies in general and the businesses and the labor market in a very disruptive fashion. Or for all you know, could actually turn out to be a way to unleash higher global efficiencies and higher global output on net. That said, no technological transformation comes without any disruption. Not only could this lead to, rendering many existing technology obsolete, but also would impact the use of human capital, and of course will lead to labor market disruption in some form or the other, or obviously could also have efficiencies in different segments of the ecosystem. To understand the complexity around AI, we have with us today Professor Pushpak Bhattacharya, who will share his perspective on NLP, LLM, and application, and how overall the evolution of AI could impact the macro and micros of broader ecosystem as a whole. Professor Bhattacharya is a Bhagat Singh Rekhi Chair Professor of Computer Sciences and Engineering at IIT Mumbai. He has done extensive research in NLP and machine learning as well. Some of his noteworthy contributions are Indian language NLP like Indo-WordNet, cognitive NLP, low resources MT, and knowledge graph deep learning, synergy, information extraction, and question answering. He's published close to 400 research papers, has authored and co-authored 6 books, including a textbook on machine translation, and has guided more than 350 students for their PhD, master's, and undergraduate thesis. Professor Bhattacharya is a Fellow of National Academy of Engineering, Abdul Kalam National Fellow, Distinguished Alumnus of IIT Kharagpur, Ex-Director of IIT Patna, and past President of ACL. He'll make a quick presentation, followed by a dialogue and a Q&A led by Dipesh, who leads our technology desk. Without much ado, I would like to welcome Sir for his presentation. He'll make a quick presentation, followed by a dialogue and a Q&A led by Dipesh, who leads our technology desk. Without much ado, I would like to welcome Sir for his presentation.
Okay, so good morning to all of you, and thank you Diptesh, thank you Pulkit, Ayush, for giving me this opportunity of talking to you about our research in the area of artificial intelligence. The previous talk was on electric vehicles. We now move from transportation and motion to another very intimate aspect of our life, namely language. And it has been the dream of humanity to have machines which are intelligent from 1960s. So my journey has been in the field of natural language processing, where our goal is to give computers the ability of generating and understanding language. Now, what is natural language processing? We use language every day, effortlessly, spontaneously. No specific or very conscious planning is required for language. Now, when we talk about natural language processing, where a computer must have language ability, the understanding is we must have language and computation on a machine. Now, NLP is that branch of AI which deals with the study and implementation of endowing natural language understanding and generation ability into the computers. Now, natural language understanding has always been a topic of great interest. Natural language generation has become very exciting in recent times, mainly in the context of generative AI, which has been very, very disruptive, as was told during the introduction of the speaker. Now, here is a bit of history. NLP is said to have been born in 1940s when two powerful countries were engaged in Cold War, USA and USSR. And both countries had the need of translation of communication between these two countries, secret communication, for defense reasons. And the translation need was from English to Russian and Russian to English. There are a number of extremely interesting, hilarious stories and myths around this situation. For example, there is this story that when the biblical sentence, the flesh is weak, but the spirit is strong, was translated to Russian and back to English. The original sentence was, the flesh is weak, but the spirit is strong. It was translated to English and into Russian and then back to English. The translation came out to be, the alcohol was strong, is good, but the flesh was weak. The meat was weak. Okay, the meat was rotten, though the alcohol was very good. So you can see the problem of machine translation here. Just word substitution doesn't do. Words typically have multiple meanings. The word bank, which is very relevant here, the word interest, which is also very relevant, they have multiple meanings. I am interested in physics, and this bank gives good interest, two different meanings of interest. Similarly, bank can be river bank, and bank can also be a financial place where transactions happen. So it was understood that translation is not a trivial task. Just substituting words from dictionary, that will not work. So 1957 to 1970, there were two competing paradigms. We all know that data is the new oil, and machine learning models can work wonders when abundant amount of data is given for training. So there were these two competing paradigms where the competition was between theory-driven artificial intelligence and machine learning and data-driven artificial intelligence. So this was followed by logic-based NLP, and the primary focus was on translating judicial documents and doing information extraction, inferencing on judicial text. So that saw the rise of logic programming, and in particular the language Prolog became very famous, mainly due to the work of Professor Kowalski in England. 1983 to 1993, there was more of empiricism, and as more and more electronic data became available, it became clear that AI now could really rely on machine learning and data, mainly grounded on the principles of probability. Then 2010 onwards, it has been the era of neural networks, deep learning models, which are really working wonders. Now, the volume of NLP business is really mind-boggling. It is estimated that by 2027, the business will grow to about $50 billion at a compound annual growth rate of 25%. Then this is really caused by data, machine learning, and advancement in systems and architecture. We need really powerful machines. And there are two key developments which have been the drivers of this technology, namely word vectors and transformers. We'll look at them a little later. Now, in natural language processing, we are interested in various foundational tasks which are shown on the rows. They are called morphology analysis, part-of-speech tagging, chunking, and so on. These are really foundational tasks. But the interesting applications of NLP are in machine translation, sentiment analysis, and so on. I'll give a few demonstrations at the end of the talk. On the columns, we see the methods by which these tasks are accomplished. There are rule-based systems, then classical machine learning-based systems, and today's technology is based on deep learning and neural networks. In classical machine learning, support vector machines were very useful for text. I recall our early research in 2010. This was with BNP Paribas, the famous bank from France, and they had a financial startup called Bluepool, which was based out of Paris and Bombay. And our goal was to study how NLP could help in deciphering the sentiment of people when stock market prices rose or fell. Okay, it was an automatic tool which was needed to be created, and we applied machine learning and NLP for doing this task. Now, two pillars of natural language processing are linguistics and probability. We need a language science mainly before the machine learning model operates to create training data, and after the machine learning model has produced results, then we need to do error analysis on the results, which again requires insight into language. And the data science and probability is required to identify patterns which are concealed in the data. And there we have two underlying powerful principles, which are called law of large numbers and central limit theorem. The law of these two principles, they tell us that we can have confidence in our probability values when the data is in abundant supply. Okay? Otherwise, the probability values cannot be relied on. So we need both language insight and data insight for natural language processing. Now, the main challenge of natural language processing is really ambiguity. Words have multiple meanings, phrases, sentences have multiple meanings. Here I give a few examples. This was, the first sentence is from Times of India, 2020. Okay? This was COVID times. The sentence, elderly with young face increased COVID-19 risk. Now, face you can see is an ambiguous word. Face can be a noun, face, or face to confront or to face a situation. Face can be a verb also. So the meaning of this sentence is old people with young children are more vulnerable to COVID-19. But change the pause. Elderly with young face increased COVID-19 risk. That will have a very strange meaning, right? Old people whose faces are young are more, they increase the risk of COVID. Similarly, of similar nature is this sentence, Maharashtra reports increased COVID-19 cases. Now again change the emphasis, Maharashtra reports increased COVID-19 cases. This will again will have a strange meaning. So language has this property of ambiguity and intriguing behavior in special circumstances. This is also an ambiguous situation, and it gives rise to humor based on incongruity. This lady has a conversation with her pet dog. The neighbor tells me you are chasing people on a motorcycle. He is lying, I don't even have a motorcycle. Okay? So who is riding the motorcycle? That is the main question, and that is giving rise to a humorous situation. Now, ambiguity is really rampant all around us. So I heard this in Vivid Bharati on 29th March. Aaj karyalay band rakha jayega. Today the office will remain closed. Change the pause and emphasis. Aaj karyalay bandar kha jayega. Okay? So that would mean today the office will be eaten by the monkey, which is a strange meaning. Now, we are resilient against these kind of pitfalls. The main reason is that we have very powerful knowledge graph contained in our brains, and we can deal with this kind of ambiguity situations with a lot of data, lot of knowledge, and lot of training. Today, in Times of India, we had this report. Zubin is coming to Mumbai, Zubin Mehta, the famous orchestra conductor. Mozart and Schubert will follow. Now, Mozart and Schubert are not living anymore. Okay, how come they will follow? So this is a very metaphorical, figurative sentence, and its purpose is to catch the attention. Now, multimodality, when we do language processing, we also try to make use of image, text, and videos together. That gives rise to very powerful systems. So if you look at the lady, her words are very positive. Wow, well done. But look at the body language. Okay, this must be a sarcastic sentence. So we do exploit this kind of incongruity in multimodal signals and give solutions for sarcasm detection, which is a very difficult natural language processing problem. There is another conversation. Passenger, thank you for sending me to Delhi and my luggage to Mumbai. Brilliant service. Again, this is a sarcastic sentence, and the chatbot did not catch the sarcasm. Thanks for the appreciation. Okay, so this conversational AI and the chatbots are very, very important NLP systems. And there is a lot of demand for these conversational AI agents to be language intelligent and empathetic. Now, natural language processing takes place in layers, starting from morphology, which is processing of words, and going up to large pieces of text through the stages of meaning, structure, and vocabulary. Finally, we would like to get the meaning of large pieces of text at the level of discourse and co-reference. So these are, deep technology and science-intensive tasks. We do not have time to go into those details. So this is our lab. It's called Center for Indian Language Technology, and we have been working on working in all areas of natural language processing and machine learning since 2000. Now we come to large language models and language models. First of all, what is a language model? A language model is an NLP system which does a very simple task extremely well. So that task is, given a sequence of words, predict the next word. Okay? Just look at a sequence of words and then predict the next word. For example, if you have this sentence, I like pizza with loads of, what could be the next possible word? The most probable word could be cheese, which has the highest probability. Then maybe corn, and the word tree coming after this sequence of words has extremely low probability. So that is what a language model does. Very, very simple task, and it does it very well with a very long context. So this has been used in machine translation, in question answering, in writing aid, and also for text encoding, okay, giving captions to images and from captions to generate images. All these have become very routine these days because of generative AI. Now, two most famous language models are InstructGPT and ChatGPT. Everybody knows about ChatGPT now. It is really taking the world by storm, to use a very cliched phrase. So, InstructGPT does not have a memory of the conversation. ChatGPT, on the other hand, carries out a meaningful conversation with full understanding of the context. Now, these are based on machines called transformers, and these names like BERT, XLM, Muriel, they have become very commonplace. Now, it is a common activity these days to create large language models in a particular domain. For example, it could be in the domain of income tax, then financial transactions, insurance, airlines industry. And in IIT Bombay, we get a lot of requests from various organizations all over the world, I should say, to help create large language models which are domain specific, language specific. So a large language model in Marathi for government documents, for example. Now, two pillars of transformer are what are called attention and positional encoding. Positional encoding helps the transformer to process words in parallel with a lot of speed, and attention says that a particular pair of words is more important. It has a stronger attraction than other pairs of words. For example, this bank gives good interest. Here the word interest is a very important disambiguator signal. This means that the bank is financial institution and not river bank. So this is the classic diagram of the transformer, and the chronology is that there were efforts at what is called alignment, okay, aligning words in corpora, in parallel sentences. And then it gave rise to encoder, decoder, attention, and finally transformer, which is the foundation for all large language models. So large language models are, they have these three important components: generative pre-training, which happens using huge amount of data, loads of data. Then there is supervised fine-tuning, which is task-specific, language-specific. And then there are AI trainers, which interact with the conversational AI agent or the large language model, and it gives feedback to the large language model. This is called reinforcement learning-based human feedback. And these three modules are essential for any large language model. So we have been comparing chatbots, and a lot of people are doing so, and there are interesting studies in the internet as to which chatbot does well on which task. So here is a report of a bit of such investigation. So three chatbots, namely Bing, ChatGPT and Bard, they were compared for a range of questions from holiday tips to gaming advice to mortgage calculation. And the conclusion is that ChatGPT is the most verbally dexterous. So it maintains extremely fluent conversation, except for some misrepresentation of facts, hallucination, etc. There can be names which do not exist actually. Bing is best for getting information from the web, and Bard is of course gradually evolving. Now the underlying systems are OpenAI's ChatGPT. Bing is also based on GPT-4. And OpenAI, of course, is expanding its scope by connecting with the various plugins for mathematical activities, calendar, and so on. Now, here are a few examples of interaction with the ChatGPT and other large language models. Give me a recipe for chocolate cake. So cake recipes offer room for a lot of creativity. There can be a lot of flexibility. And for this question, of course, ChatGPT was the best. Chose a chocolate cake recipe from one side, a buttercream recipe from another. Share the link for one of the two and reproduce both of their ingredients correctly. So the response from ChatGPT was the best in this case, as lots of people have verified from various parts of the world. Writing a poem, ChatGPT is just excellent in it. You probably have experienced this already. So here the request was to write a poem about a worm in anapaestic tetrameter, which is a very rare kind of meter. So this is the way the poem proceeded. It was the night before Christmas when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. So this is a kind of lazy movement of text, and this meter is not very common, but ChatGPT could produce this. Then basic mathematics. The ChatGPT was, and the other chatbots were asked to determine monthly repayments and total repayments for a mortgage of $125,000 repaid over 25 years at 3.9% interest. So what happened here was that none offered the answer supplied by the several online mortgage calculators. So online calculators are better in this job. And Bard and Bing gave different results when queried multiple times. GPT-4, that is ChatGPT, was consistent, but failed the task because it insisted on explaining the methodology. You will see that in ChatGPT the explanations are very long, and very soon the system runs out of space to answer. So this was the basic math, and then ChatGPT's forthcoming plugins will include the Wolfram Alpha option. So then a calculator will be integrated with ChatGPT. So what is the average salary for a plumber in New York City? Bing actually cited sources in answering the question. ChatGPT gave a ballpark figure and explained that there were caveats. And Bard, of course, did something similar. Then designing a training plan for marathon, ChatGPT was the winner by many miles. Bing linked out a Runner's World article. It essentially produced a manual for running a marathon, but a program was actually chalked out by ChatGPT. Then holiday tips. All three chatbots did well, and many of the suggestions from Bing, Bard, and ChatGPT are fine for getting away from those busiest areas. So all the LLMs were useful there. Then I gave a test to ChatGPT. I gave it a story, and that story had an internal inconsistency. Once a ship was going from England to France. After a few days of journey, it was caught in a violent storm. The ship was wrecked, and the captain somehow survived, and he lived in an island for some time. And to appease his hunger, he got hold of some potatoes and boiled them. So while the fire was burning, then he spotted some shining objects on the sand below the fire, and that object he kept with himself. And fortunately, he was rescued by a ship. When he went to England, he took these shining objects with him, and those turned out to be glass. And this is how the glass was discovered. So you can immediately see that there is an internal inconsistency in this story, because if glass was discovered then, how could he spot ship and other things with a binocular? it is said that he had a binocular. Okay? So this is the internal inconsistency. So what did ChatGPT do? It said that the history of glass making goes back thousands of years, and this cannot be the story of glass making. So instead of spotting the internal inconsistency, it went back to history and said that historically this story is not viable. Okay? It did not spot the internal inconsistency. So, so this way we have been working with a lot of large language models, especially ChatGPT in our lab, and we have interesting experiences to share later maybe. So I come to some applications which are very practical. So the first application is automatic radiology report generation from dictation of radiologists and from image. So there is a real need for this kind of automation. Radiologist to patient ratio in India is 1 in 100,000. The comparable number is 1 in 10,000 for USA and 1 in about 15,000 in China. So there is a dire need for automation in radiology report generation. So, and radiologists themselves say there is significant delay in report turnaround time, and radiologists are incredibly busy and stressed out. The typical workflow is this: the radiologist dictates a report, the transcriptionist takes down some notes, the transcriptionist consults some normal reports, makes necessary modifications, gives the report back to the radiologist, and this cycle continues until a proper report is generated. This whole process takes about 2 days. And I'm told that in UK, a radiology report takes about 7 days to come. Okay? So now we introduced AI here. Our industry partner, which is a startup, namely Ognito, so they have a high quality ASR system. So that takes the radiologist dictation, converts it into text, and this text we use to query a knowledge graph. A knowledge graph is a collection of concepts and their relationships in a particular domain. So from that we generate a report, and this is in a matter of about 5 to 6 minutes. So this system is being now tested in various hospitals in Bombay and Thane. Now the problem statement is this: the input text is radiologist dictation and the output is a report end-to-end. So this required creating something called a knowledge graph, and the reports look like this. So in the abdominal report, we have statements about the liver, the gallbladder, the stomach, and so on. And we have taken 12 organs from inside the abdominal area and created the knowledge graph for this. So the radiologist dictation is converted into a medically acceptable detailed sentence. For example, chronic pancreatitis is expanded into: pancreas is slightly small, reveals thin, inhomogeneous parenchyma. The pancreatic duct is dilated. So this is a medically acceptable statement from the informal dictation of the radiologist. So this requires huge input from what is called a knowledge graph. So this is a knowledge graph. It is the knowledge graph of liver. So that was created quite painstakingly by my PhD student with help from doctors. So this is created automatically and is vetted and improved by the doctor. We used a transformer-based system, and there is a running system. Of course, this can be demonstrated also, and such a report is generated in a matter of minutes. From this application, I go to another application that is the last part of my talk. So this is on conversational AI, namely chatbots, and introducing empathy in those chatbots. So should we work on emotional chatbots, empathetic chatbots? The answer is yes. There was a review by Harvard Business magazine in 2015, which showed that there is a direct link between empathy and commercial success. Businesses are more profitable and productive when they act ethically, treat their staff well, and communicate better with their customers, according to the latest Geek Global Empathy Index. So empathy brings business. Okay, it is a proven fact, and we also in our lab, we are approached by different organizations to say that they have deployed chatbots to interact with their customers, but they want these chatbots to be more human. Okay? So this same report brought out a global index rank list, and there it was shown that LinkedIn is most empathetic organization. Google is in the 7th place, Nike is 8th, and so on. So this is slightly old, it is about 8 years old, but every year such rank lists are created by different management consultancy organizations. So the wish list is that a conversational AI agent must understand and respond to emotion, decode sarcasm, humor, understand rare language phenomena like metaphor, hyperbole, irony, and so on. Now, we recently published our work on metaphor and hyperbole detection. I give an example of this. The principal is angry is a plain statement. But look at the last sentence, the principal is going to cook us. This has exaggeration, that is hyperbole, and it is also metaphoric because it is making use of the imagery of cooking somebody. Okay? That means the principal is extremely, extremely angry. Now, this probably is a concocted example. I got it from some source, but this is the scenario. Okay? The chatbot asked the human interrogator, "How was your day?" "It was raining profits today." "Oh, remember to take an umbrella next time." "I mean, I made a ton of money." "Oh, it must have been heavy." And then sigh. Okay, so AI agents, conversational AI agents still do not have this ability of, this subtle understanding of humor, sarcasm, etc. And we tried to have some lead in this area, some kind of, let's say, path-breaking research. So we worked on this problem, and we used what is called a multitasked deep neural network, where hyperbole and metaphor are detected together. Why multitask? Because we have seen that these two phenomena, hyperbole and metaphor, are very heavily dependent on each other. People often use metaphor by making use of exaggerated statements and vice versa. So now this system I probably will be able to demonstrate to you. Here I summarize my talk. We discuss the nature of natural language processing. Machine learning steps in to do ambiguity resolution. LLMs have become all-pervading now. Depending on resource availability, lightest to heaviest. So LLMs are now being prompted. So that is the lightest option, where we hardly need any resource. The next more resource-heavy option is what is called adapter, where we have a feed-forward neural network after the large language model. Still heavier resource-intensive situation is fine-tuning. We take our task-specific data, maybe the financial data, and train a large language model. Pre-training is most expensive. Only very large industries can do this. Google, Meta, Apple, and so on. They can invest that kind of resource. This is typically billions of parameters are trained with trillions of tokens. Okay, this is very, very huge task. ChatGPT currently performing the best, and applications in health, rare language phenomena like metaphor are becoming more and more important. So I have 2 demos to show you. And here are some conclusions. Natural language processing indeed is language and computation, which means mainly linguistics and probability. Knowledge, logic, data, machine learning are the fundamentals. We also need what is called ideas from probability. Noisy channel, gradient descent, backpropagation, deep networks. These are our bread and butter techniques. Deep learning, of course, succeeds with data, so data needs to be created. But many times data is scarce. For example, data for Manipuri language, for its natural language processing, hardly any data exists. So this is the situation for most languages. There we need human-machine synergy, and also what is called transfer learning. Try to obtain the result from 0 or almost no data, and we have to use something called meta-learning. So these are the conclusions. So let me just go and try to give a demo.
जाहीर केल्या.
So this was a Marathi statement. Hindi. The finance minister announced many beneficial measures for the poor.
वित्त मंत्री ने गरीबों के लिए कई लाभकारी उपायों की घोषणा की.
So this works. Okay, this works pretty well actually. And let me see if I can show you some metaphor. This takes a few seconds. This is a metaphorical sentence. John works very hard all day and is a ball of fire. Ball of fire is the metaphorical part of the sentence. So it will take a few seconds. We are yet to take it to a GPU-based system. Now it is on CPU. And let me take this sentence here. Meanwhile, this is the sentence on Finance Minister's announcement. This is text-to-text translation. वित्त मंत्री ने गरीबों के लिए कोई फायदेमंद उपायों की घोषणा की. I'm going from English to Marathi, Marathi to Hindi, and back to English from Hindi. The finance minister announced several pro-poor measures. Okay, so this is some of the text. But see how the English original sentence changed. The English original sentence was, the finance minister announced many beneficial measures for the poor. It went to Hindi, then to it went to Marathi, then to Hindi, then back to English. In the process, the translation was, the finance minister announced several pro-poor measures. So measures beneficial for the poor became several pro-poor measures. So this is happening because of probability. Okay? So this is the interesting part of NLP systems these days. Meanwhile, the metaphorical sentence, let's see. Yeah. So you see the metaphor score is high. 0.997 means it is metaphor. It's almost 1. And does this phrase, ball of fire, get detected? Yes. Ball of fire, you can see the color is dark. So the dark color means that a lot of importance is being given to this particular phrase here. Okay? So these systems work well, and I think lots of exciting things are happening in the world of NLP. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for a very interesting and insightful session. To just start with, let's say a couple of questions to get things into context, and maybe audience can pitch in further. Now, AI, I think first thing you said about large language model and many training requirements. So what will be the, right now ChatGPT is free, people want to try and test it, but let's say when you look business cases, the most important thing would be what will be the cost involved. So if you can help us understand in any large language model, what would be the cost involved and how you expect benefit to cover that kind of cost?
Yeah. Hello. 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 Yeah. That's fine. Okay. So the question was on how expensive is it to train large language models. Now, fortunately for us, all these large industries like Google, Meta, and these kind of big industries, they have made their pre-trained models available for use. Of course, for business purposes and commercial purposes, there is a charge, and that becomes quite exorbitant going forward. However, what is possible, for example, Llama 2, which was released by Meta 2 weeks back, I suppose. So that large language model you can download on your DGX machines, which are GPU based, okay, A100 machines which are a very powerful GPU-based machine. So the investment in buying this kind of machines is about 1.5 crore, 1 to 1.5 crore, one machine. It has 8 GPUs. Each GPU has 80 GB of memory. So this is quite affordable. And you can download any of these large language models which are already pre-trained, and we can fine-tune that machine for our specific purpose. So suppose we would like to train it on financial data, having, let's say, 100,000 or 1 million tokens. So after downloading this machine, training such a task takes maybe about a day at most. Okay, and after that, the LLM, fine-tuned LLM becomes very, very suitable for executing this task. So the cost is mainly in the hardware, I would say, and in manpower.
Yeah, so I think one of the important things which you highlighted is whether do you expect this so-called LLM model and few large corporates which will generally create and invest into this LLM model create monopoly? So if you look, let's say 5 year, 10 year out, they will, because they control LLM model, whether they create some kind of monopoly which can have some implication about the way technology evolution is likely to happen in future.
Yeah, that is true. Science and technology does lead to monopoly. Google indeed has huge, huge advantage in the space of natural language processing, machine learning, because they were the first movers and they could get a business out of it. They could invest more, and it became a virtuous cycle for them, very, very profitable. Now, there is also a force of democratization. Okay. Now, these large language models, since they are now open, and why are they being made open? They are being made open because these industries also get a lot of goodwill by opening them up. They, first of all, get very talented manpower in the form of students coming from IITs, IIMs, and so on. So it pays back. But all these large language models are now downloadable, trainable, so there is a democratization there, surely.
Okay, and in terms of now, because many things you are automating it, and through ChatGPT or GenAI, there would be more sophistication in terms of the way machine understand human language and respond to it. Do you think it could have a very serious implication for employment? Because it takes time for you to train people, so there might be generation change required for you to have that kind of adaptability.
Yeah.
So in interim, whether it would be a very painful process, particularly for a country like India, which is very labor intensive, and skill impartment will take longer period of time. So in interim, it would be very painful situation. Maybe in medium term, things will resolve and people get reskilled. But what's your view on that?
Yeah, so in the long run, I'm sure it will generate more employment. I mean, historically speaking, when trains came, okay, the technology of railways came, lots of people lost their job. A big segment were runners, okay, who took postage from one city to another, running on the road. So, however, railway has opened up lots of other sectors of economy. Now, in this particular case, since I deal with lots of organizations across the country, in India, AI cannot fail. Okay, in India, AI is actually desperately looked for. Talk to radiologists, talk to doctors, talk to any kind of public interface people. They need natural language processing, machine learning. They cannot cope with the pressure of demand. So expertise to supply of expertise to demand is extremely skewed in India, and here definitely AI will succeed. But I think your question is about low-skill jobs, okay, where AI will replace a huge manpower. So this is definitely a serious thought. When I was director of an institute, there used to be meetings with the Ministry of IT, and Honorable Minister of IT used to be present. There were many meetings on upskilling, reskilling, and so on. This is not an easy question to answer. So one of the threatened jobs is the secretarial jobs, for example, okay, where ChatGPT and NLP systems will be used increasingly for producing reports, correcting reports, and so on. So the hope is that people will now be able to make use of machines' output and refine them, and also get their skills uplifted because of this experience of interacting with the machines. So not everything is lost really. Okay, new avenues will open up.
Understand. Maybe we can open floor for audience. If you have any question.
They say that Sanskrit is the most computer-friendly language. Is it true? Because they keep reading about this on the internet.
Yeah. So, for this, maybe we should go to the foundations a bit. What is a most computer-friendly language? Languages which have less ambiguity. So, to give you an example, if I say "will go," so is it clear who will go? Because "will go" can apply to they will go, I will go, you will go. So, it is not clear who will go. On the other hand, if you hear "jaunga," I think it is immediately clear that I will go. Jaunga can apply to only first person singular number, future tense. So it is true that Sanskrit has very little ambiguity at the lowest level of processing. But when you go to higher levels, like when you create colorful text, when you do poetry, when you do literature, Sanskrit is as ambiguous as any other language. Okay, so the point is that if a user manual, a manual for servicing a refrigerator, if it is written in Sanskrit, okay, will a computer be able to do information extraction more easily from there? The answer is yes. But the point is that adoption of Sanskrit as a language for writing manuals is out of question actually. So we'll have to live with the ambiguity. Now the ambiguity at the lower level is low, but at the higher level you have all kinds of ambiguity. Just to give you an example, if you know Sanskrit, if you take the phrase "Vriddhasya mitrasya griham," Vriddhasya mitrasya griham. So this has two meanings: old friend's house or old man's friend's house. That is because Vriddha can be both an adjective and noun. It can mean both an old man or a qualifier as old. So ambiguity exists in all natural languages. Yeah.
Yeah. Firstly, thank you very much for very simply explaining a lot of these jargons. It was very helpful. In this ChatGPT and some of these modules, they also have some plugins, right? And which helps this whole thing much better. Can you explain a little bit more? How does this work?
They have what?
Some plugins, some applications. Yeah. What exactly is this? And so generally, do you use just ChatGPT by itself? I mean, ChatGPT by itself, or you also do plugins? How does it exactly? And what are this? So what exactly is this?
Yeah. So as I said, the ChatGPT as a large language model is trained to do one thing very well, namely predict the words, second and the next word, or fill in the blank. So I'll go to dash today to bring some money. So most likely word here is bank. Now a large language model is trained to do fill in the blank and to predict the next word. This is what it does very well. In doing so, it obtains parameter values, and those parameter values can be retrained for a particular task. Now plugins are those which ask the large language model to pass the control to them. For example, Wolfram Alpha, which does mathematical calculations, ChatGPT is now integrating itself with Wolfram Alpha. So when it sees a mathematical question, instead of trying to fetch the answer from the corpus or trying to synthesize the answer based on the trained corpus, it passes control to Wolfram Alpha. Okay, so that is done by a kind of wrapper or a software which is integrated with the large language model. So these plugins, we'll see these plugins increasingly. For example, to say, if I ask a question, how many years before Akbar ruled India? Now, how many years before is from today? So how does ChatGPT know the date of today? It won't know. So it has to query a calendar, and that is the plugin which is introduced. Yeah.
And generally speaking, like what Dipesh was also talking about, how do you see the impact of this on the IT services industry in India per se, I mean, do you see a very significant impact because we have a very large force, human force over there?
Yeah.
Do you see that incrementally a lot of job will shift to machines?
So this is also a very, very important question, and there are a number of perspectives for answering this question. So one thing that is known is that these large language models are extremely good in generating code. Now, programming is really changing its character. The interaction is with prompts and natural language text, which converts into a program. Now, a piece of software is a very, very sensitive object. Okay. Now, suppose a piece of software is controlling an airplane or a process plant or calculating interest on loan, etc. So there we cannot afford to have any mistake. So what is happening is that these kind of sensitive pieces of code, once they are produced by a large language model, they are passed through a lot of stages of scrutiny. Okay, that's happening. So it's definitely the character of programming in the IT sector is changing. The other kind of service is customer support. So customer supports typically come from some kind of call service provider and so on. So that sector is definitely getting partially replaced by ChatGPT like conversational AI agents. And we know that simple customer support questions, maintenance questions are easily answered by conversational agents. But the example that I showed about changing the RAM in a device, an important part of answering that question was something to do with the BIOS. So none of these chatbots could answer that question or touched upon that particular point. So when it becomes very specialized and detailed, we do see their limitations. But of course, there is also a receding frontier, I'm sure.
Right. So, you made a very important point that this machine learnings are very good as far as the coding is concerned. And Indian IT industry, one of the big advantages over the other countries, whether it is China, Philippines, was the language.
Yeah.
And now the kind of the language translation that you are showing, does India lose its edge over a period of time? Or is it a threat?
Does India lose the edge?
Yeah, because the language is no more going to be India's strength because now it's going to anyways get translated by the machines.
Right.
So is it a threat?
Yeah, okay. I've never thought about this question, but let me think on my feet. That translation is an important industry and it has huge application, of course. Now, in IT sector, of course, India has huge advantage because of English proficiency. So other languages might make use of machine translation and come into the sector by making use of machine. So that is going to happen. The problem is that language is used not only for day-to-day routine tasks. Language has lots of other dimensions like nuances, trends, hate speech, hallucination, sentiment, emotion, all these things. And as far as we see in the machine translation arena, those things which make human communication human is still quite far away. But I don't think we are in great risk as far as translation is concerned. But I don't think I do not have a very good answer for your question, possibly. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Just last question on my side, and then maybe we can end the session. Just about the continuing on this topic about AI and its implication. Now, positive side, obviously, it is a far-reaching outcome kind of thing. Similarly, on the negative and use and regulation and all those things, what's your point of view in terms of you believe in a very highly regulation kind of thing for AI and its development in future, or you think it should be very lightly regulated?
Regulation is a difficult point, and in academia, faculty members, we do not like regulation very much, okay, because that stifles the creativity. But on large language models, important concerns are what kind of data are used for training the large language models. So ideally, the data should be anything and everything. Okay. Otherwise, large language models will not have the power that they have. But at the same time, because of this data, they can produce bias, they can hallucinate, they can produce offensive text. So there is a balancing act required. Now here is an interesting question on which we are now doing some research and deeply investigating. A large language model sees a lot of offensive text, a lot of bad text. But it also sees Bhagavad Gita, Bible, Quran, and so on. Okay, so when it is producing offensive text, why can't another force inside it regulate it and say that, yeah, this is bad, you should not produce this, just like we do. Okay, that's like we have inbuilt morality. So how to build in morality inside a large language model is a very deep and complex question. So so there is also this work on counter narrative generation. When you generate offensive text, at the same time it can also generate a counter narrative saying that this is a piece of text which came from my training data, but I am also producing this other data which is a counter to this, and judge for yourself which path you want to take. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much for your insightful session and very good perspective. Thanks. Good day.
Thank you. Thank you very much.